because this might be the inner chronicle of what we are, and we have to articulate ourselves, otherwise we would be cows in a field.
Welcome to Cows in the Field. This is a movie podcast. My name is Justin.
I'm Laura.
And today we're talking about the 2007 Coen Brothers movie, No Country for Old Men. But we also have a very special guest today, hailing from Texas originally. A good friend of Laura's from middle school.
Yes, the 8th grade. Welcome, Edward.
Welcome.
Hi.
He was waiting like, can I talk
to be here?
Yeah, you can. No, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is one of your favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. Not one that I like really want to watch a lot, but it's one I do return to pretty frequently, like probably once a year.
It's one of those. Yeah,
We have a couple of those.
Like the annual required viewing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had been a while for us, actually. We were trying to track it, and we hadn't seen it since 2013.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a while.
Yeah,
that's
right?
long. It's longer than I would have expected, but
it felt fresh. Like
It
it felt
did.
like it stuck with us that whole time. So yeah, we hadn't realized that 7 years had passed almost since we had seen it before.
yeah, this movie. I mean, this is routinely put in the sort of upper echelon of the Coen Brothers filmography, I think, and and I think, like, Edward, you wanted to start us out with a preliminary question to sort of get things going. Is it?
Yeah, it's something that occurred to me when I was rewatching it and thinking about it, and this comes up for I guess assessing and analyzing movies of all sorts that are adapted from other material. Like when I see people criticize a movie for a plot point or a character detail or a theme, like I wonder is the criticism of that element really directed at the movie itself, or is it directed at the source material? And for a movie that is so renowned as being a very close adaptation of the novel by Cormac McCarthy, I just wonder, I mean, are the things that I like about it, like, do the Coen brothers really get credit for that? Or I mean, because they got best adapted screenplay for it, and I think that's probably an earned award, but at the same time, this isn't, I don't think, a very widely known fact, but Cormac McCarthy wrote this as a screenplay in the 80s, and nobody wanted to produce it.
That's so
and so he just wound up back, like, in the early 2000s, reorienting it back into a novel.
Do we know how it came to be that the Coen brothers got this movie made? Like,
I think they actually they got an advanced copy of it. So they were working on the idea of adapting it, I think, before it was actually even officially published.
Wow. And that's funny too, because you'd think like McCarthy would just want to write his own movie. That's what he tried to do in the first place. I wonder what that screenplay and becoming screenplay to book back to screenplay, like how different those are.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to read it. I don't know if it's actually available, and like he's got a collection of his papers at one of the universities in San Marcos, and I don't know if it's there or if he's ever put it anywhere. But
yeah,
I've seen one of his screenplays adapted, The Counselor,
right,
which Ridley Scott adapted.
Scott, yeah.
And
Ridley Scott. Okay, for some reason I was thinking Oliver Stone.
No, yeah, that's
a different one.
Savages.
Savages. Thank you.
Oh,
I don't know why those are intertwined in our minds.
Yeah,
They're
I
very
have to say,
different
I
directors.
am not necessarily all that confident that a Cormac McCarthy screenplay of this would be anywhere near as good as the Coen brothers adapting a novelization of, or self-novelization of a screenplay.
Right.
Well, it is an interesting idea. I mean, it's a very, I mean, and so you read the book, and I read it a long time ago, but it is a cinematic book. Like, I remember reading the book and then seeing the movie very quickly thereafter and being like, whoa, this movie is just the book, really. And it's like beat for beat, and it's all in the book. I mean, at least all of the stuff that plays out really well as far as the action goes and is in the book. And is sort of described in detail. And anyway, I thought it was really interesting that it's a really cinematic book. And now knowing that it was written as a screenplay, that kind of makes a lot of sense, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. It's different from a lot of his other books, which don't really translate that easily to screen, I don't think. I mean, the whole notion that Blood Meridian is something that can't be adapted is like an ongoing debate. And yeah, so I think I completely agree. It's like a very cinematic novel, and they really translate like the whole opening monologue by Sheriff Bell. Like every single chapter opens with a monologue by Sheriff Bell in the book. And so it's like a perfect way to frame the whole movie as you take excerpts and put them together and then frame the whole thing the way every chapter is framed in the book. Like it, I mean, I think they were the right people to adapt it.
Do you like the movie better than the book, or are they just different for you?
It's really hard to separate them out for me now. Like when I was going back over this and realizing that there are like questions that are raised in the movie, and it's like, well, the book addresses that, but does that mean that the Coen brothers' vision of it agrees with the details that appear only in the book, or are they leaving things more vague intentionally? I don't know. So I actually saw the movie before I read it, and so I actually had the like Tommy Lee Jones' voice in my head reading all those monologues, which was actually, I couldn't believe they never got him to do the audiobook for it, because that would have been amazing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh.
But
would have been nice.
I don't know that I have like anything like that. I'm trying to think of like adaptations where I have a love for both the book and the movie, but they're like separate relationships. Like I usually have a strong preference for one or the other.
I can give you one example.
Okay.
So for me, I have a very strong relationship both with the book Dune and the movie Dune.
Yep.
But they're very different relationships. Like I like them both, but for very different reasons. They're both very different in what they're trying to do, and I think they're very different in the themes that are going on, and how successful they can sort of bring out those themes. But yeah, I think it was because I got into them when I was really young, and it just kind of hit me at the right point. And I saw the movie, and it was the first David Lynch movie I had ever seen, and it just was like kind of mind blowing to me in this way. And that I loved the book so much that I sort of fell in love with the movie. So, but yeah, I think of them as very different. And for me, there's no competition there. Like some people are like, I love Dune, but I like the book, but I hate the movie because the movie takes all these liberties, cuts out all these parts that were like sacred cows for me. And that I just don't care about that. I love all the extra details that Lynch adds.
Right. And those are, I mean, he includes all the like a lot of the important plot points, but the interpretation is so different that like this question of authorship, like who's getting credit for the plot points and the characterizations like that. Edward raised the question. It's not as messy with Dune, because Dune just like goes off on its own freaking direction. The movie, I mean, David Lynch just like runs off into the distance with it.
Yeah, it almost feels like. Have you seen it, Edward?
I haven't, nor have I read it.
I see. Yeah, it basically what happened is Lynch. It got out over budget, and it was going to be like 3.5 hours or something, and the studio was like, "There's no way, you can't do that." So they cut it down, and as a result, and the things that Lynch was ultimately interested in are not plot. Like he's never really interested in plot, and so having him direct a very plotty sci-fi book was a huge mistake in retrospect. But he the things that where it's good is where it's not really concerned with plot. Like there's all these little details he adds and cool like sci-fi twisty elements that are in there that are kind of sort of in the book, but he brings his own flavor to them. And then it is clear he has to do the plot because he's like, okay, fine, I've got to do the plot. And then it's like all rushed. It's like, oh, okay, and then this happened, and this happened, and this happened, just to get through the plot. And the movie just kind of like wraps it up really fast in like the last 20 minutes. And it's like, and I think people in the theater were just like, what? This is garbage. Like it's so clunky in the end. But I forgive it every sin.
He loves it so much that it's going to be its own podcast.
I feel like Lord of the Rings might be an example for a lot of people who are.
Oh yeah.
Those are very beloved movies and obviously books. I'm sure people who are diehard Lord of the Rings fans have very different relationships to both of them. I would imagine.
I was going to say
haven't read
Lord of the
books since I was
Rings.
a kid,
It's a really good example.
Yeah, I was going to say Lord of the Rings, but I actually the movies have completely overtaken the books for me. I can't even imagine the book without the movie. Like I
you
went
just
back,
see the movie in your,
I just
in your
see
head.
the movie,
That tends to happen.
And I think what Peter Jackson did in terms of streamlining some of the stuff in the book, I'm just like, oh, it's better. Oh no, it's better. I love it more.
Yeah.
I love it more.
I don't think you need to apologize for that.
Well, I mean, the book is like the Bible for some people.
I think that there are things that the Coen brothers did with No Country for Old Men, honestly, that cut down like long plot elements that didn't really need to be there. I mean, at least if you're going to adapt it into a movie, like I personally hold the opinion that typically the best way to adapt a novel is into a miniseries where you don't necessarily have to rush through it. But this was like a really efficient, good trimming down, in my opinion.
It's
like
a lean movie.
I think they did a great job of cutting out the extraneous stuff and holding on to the right themes and characterizations.
So should we just make sure we cover like the basics?
Yeah.
So
back to basics.
So here's the cast. We've got 4. We'll do 4 main characters. So
all right.
And
four dudes. There is a lady.
Yeah,
but
we'll stick with
4
the
main dudes.
There's some good supporting ladies. That are like
Carla
Jean
Jean is great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I would say the protagonist is Llewellyn Moss, played by Josh Brolin. He's like the protagonist. He's the person we're supposed to see the movie through his eyes. Of course, then there's also Sheriff Ed Tom Bell, played by Tommy Lee Jones. And then there are sort of 2. Well, there's like one bad guy, Anton Chigurh, Javier Bardem, who won the Supporting Actor Academy Award for this movie. And then Carson Wells, played by Woody Harrelson, who's
like a MacGuffin. He's barely in it. But he's so fun when he is. But I remembered, to his credit, I remembered him being a much bigger part of this movie, and then I rewatched it and I was like, oh man, he's like already dead. That's crazy. Like he just shows up and then he's out.
It is kind of remarkable that he's Woody Harrelson and he's like a big name star. He in many
I mean, that's a Coen brother movie, right? They can get anybody to come in for 3 lines.
Right, but it is interesting that I think it takes like 45 minutes or so before he's even introduced on screen, and then he's killed off 20 minutes later or something.
Pretty close to that, I think. I think a lot of his character serves is to provide character exposition about Chigurh.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And slightly nudge the plot forward by being an intercessor. Is that the right word?
That's a good point. Yeah, because he sort of knits together the sort of the money man, who's played by what's his name?
Stephen Root.
Right. Yeah. And so he kind of knits together the money man and the Chigurh, I guess. Like that's the tie there. And then,
you're right. Edward's totally right. He provides some character. He just gives a little bit of background.
Right.
You don't know much about Chigurh. He's a kind of total alien. Like, how the hell did he get in Texas?
Yeah.
No question. No answer to that question. Maybe McCarthy answered it. But he does sort of give this idea. Nope. He does this. He's like, he lives by his own principles.
Right. Well,
he gives that little speech.
That's
about
true.
Chigurh.
We kind of in a way know that from the coin flip scene. But one thing I really think that he does well, and to your point, Edward, is that he what you learn about Chigurh from Woody Harrelson's character is that he doesn't actually care about the money. Like Woody Harrelson is like, I'll get you the money, and he's like, no, that's not what this is about.
I know where the satchel is.
If you knew, you would have it with you.
I could find it from the riverbank. I know where it is.
I know something better.
What's that?
I know what it's going to be.
Where's that?
It will be brought to me and placed at my feet.
You don't know to a certainty. 20 minutes, it could be here.
I do know to a certainty. And you know what's going to happen now, Carson. You should admit your situation. There will be more dignity in it.
You go to hell.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let me ask you something. If the rule you followed brought you to this, Of what use was the rule?
Do you have any idea how crazy you are?
You mean the nature of this conversation?
I mean the nature of you.
I think it's a really important moment, actually, because this is a moment where you realize, like, this guy is not like an understandable, sensible human being or rational human being that we can understand as humans, right? As other humans, like we can't even make sense of this guy's
His
motivations.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? He's like an alien.
And Carson Wells explains that to Owen when he says, like, if I was into cutting deals, why would I make one with this guy Sugar? And he says, no, you don't understand.
You can't deal with
No.
Although he does try to deal with him then in the next scene.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Yeah. What Sugar says, though, is like everybody says the same thing, though,
Yeah,
when
that's
a
true.
gun
When
is
the
pointed,
chips are
or
down.
when the chips are down, when a gun or air gun or whatever is pointed at your head, you're always going to try and make a deal.
So another thing we should maybe do is just in 10 seconds, like, what's the plot of this movie? And I was sort of thinking, like, it basically, the beats are, there's been a fight with some gangs over drugs. Llewellyn Moss finds them. He finds the money. He takes it back, but he decides on a whim to go back to bring this guy some water. This guy who was a lone survivor. And then he's discovered by by whoever the gangs come to clean it up, and they get his truck, and then they have all this information on him, and then they go after him. And then it's this setup between
Chigurh is sent after him.
Chigurh is sent
to get
after
the money
him to get the
back.
money. He's on the run. Sheriff Bell's kind of in the picture trying to
He's just one
rein
step
in
behind.
Chigurh and save Llewellyn Moss. And they have some shootouts, and spoiler alert, that basically everyone dies except for Chigurh walks away. Sort of. And but Llewellyn Moss isn't, like, the entire his wife, the wife's mom are all dead by the end of the movie. And Sheriff Bell retires. Like he's this is like the moment that, like, breaks him, and he has to hang up his spurs.
Loretta tells me you're quitting. How come you're doing that?
I don't know. I feel overmatched. I always figured when I got older, God would sort of come into my life somehow. And he didn't. And I don't blame him.
That's basically the movie, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
just plot
pretty
wise.
much.
There's not much, like, plot there.
Mhm.
It's more about a mood or something.
It's
Yeah.
pretty bare bones thriller plot
Mm-hmm.
on the surface when you just, like, lay out what happens.
There was just some things that were ambiguous that were, like, a little bit unclear.
Yeah, well, tell me which ones you have in mind, because I mean I think there are plenty of them, and I
mean, one is there's a sort of a potential showdown between Chigurh and Sheriff Bell in the motel room. This is like the crime scene. He's coming back to the crime scene. You know, it's actually like a kind of mirroring of the scene that I was just mentioning in the plot summary, where Llewellyn Moss goes back to the crime scene to bring the water.
Oh,
Bell
I see.
comes back to the crime scene.
I thought you were going to talk about a different a mirroring.
Really? Okay. Well, anyway, but I mean, right? It's like a coming back. Like it's like dark, right? But in both cases, and he's sort of coming back, and it's unclear why he's coming back.
Right.
I think that's actually kind of important that these guys, like, make a decision, and it's almost like against their better judgment that they're doing this, right? It's almost like a stupid move, like, don't do it.
Yeah.
And he goes back, and okay, so the way it's shot, this was totally unclear to me, and so and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Edward. So the way it's shot, it looks like Chigurh is reflected in the knob or whatever the blown out what is it, the
keyhole?
the keyhole, the blown out keyhole. It looks like you can sort of see, like, movement there from both perspectives. You see the perspective of Sheriff Bell looking in, you see movement behind, then you cut to Chigurh on the other side, and you see movement on the side of where Sheriff Bell is. But then what was unclear to me is like he enters the room and he throws the door open, and there's no way that Anton Chigurh, who's like a solid like 240, right? He's a big guy. There's no way he is fitting behind that door like once it opens. So then I'm like, wait, was he there, or was this cross-cutting like actually like temporally distant, so they actually wasn't happening at the same time? Anyway, that was my confusion.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I think the book informs my reading of it, and so it's a really all right. The buzzer should have gone off. I'm venturing into book territory.
No, book territory is where we want to go.
You have to be our book expert. Justin doesn't remember. I haven't read it.
Yeah. So I looked this up the other day because I was trying to remember the exact way that this is mentioned. But in one of the opening monologues, Sheriff Bell mentions having encountered evil, and that how he knows it exists because he walked in front of its eyes once, and he was never going to do that again. So my reading of that, and from the way that scene plays out in the movie, is that he was either behind the door or he was somewhere in the immediate vicinity, and then definitely saw Bell. And Bell realized that after the fact.
Yeah.
Like that feeling that you have when somebody's watching you.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, he realized it also because what triggers him to go back to the room in the movie is that he's talking to his, I guess, the El Paso sheriff in the diner afterwards, and he mentions like, how do you wrap your head around this guy who kills a desk clerk one day and walks right back in the next day and kills a retired army colonel? Like, it defies all logic that someone who would do something so brazen, and that's what gets Bell thinking like, wait, he walked right back into the crime scene.
Right.
And so then he goes to visit the motel room where Llewellyn was killed.
Right. So he potentially he'll find him there.
Right. Yeah. He's like, well,
but is he even prepared for what he finds? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We know that much about his MO, and we don't know much about his MO from Sheriff Bell's perspective.
That's right.
Okay. That's right.
Yeah. That's why I think that's meant. I mean, I think the Coens probably made it so that the door swings and then there's nothing behind it, just to kind of make it ambiguous.
I find it so confusing.
And in that conversation with the El Paso counterpart, he also says he's a ghost, right?
Oh, that's interesting.
So like there's something like inhuman about Javier Bardem's about Chigurh.
Yeah.
It's funny that we all had different interpretations, or that like it's a confusing sequence because there's an insert. He goes to the bathroom and there's an insert shot of like the window latch, and I was like, is that supposed to suggest he like somehow shimmied out the window? Again, solid 240 seems unlikely. Also,
that's a guess.
I know. I just think it's really funny you're giving stats on Chigurh.
He's a big boy.
And like the window would be open. That doesn't really make any sense. But in my head, I saw like they, for whatever reason, I'd insert a shot of the latch. So I was like, is that supposed to mean he like escaped? But then I was also, we have a Coen brothers book, and that author thinks that Chigurh is in the other motel room, that like he's trying to decide which door it is, and he goes into one room, and it's not actually the same room. So it's a mirroring perhaps of when Javier Bardem like picks the wrong room when he's trying to get the money the first time around in another motel scene.
That would explain
because he put it in the vent and he retrieved it from the other hotel room.
Right. But we see that the vent has been opened.
We do. But we also see
in the side that the sheriff
different
dies
on
in.
the inside that wouldn't necessarily be big enough to fit the money satchel.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
At least not in a way that it could be retrieved from another room. Like he might have been able to stash it just inside.
Mm-hmm.
But
so this is all very
confusing.
confusing.
It's like a rectangular vent with then a circular ventilation shaft inside that's smaller.
Right.
I think this is great. I think it's great that the movie allows for this. I mean, they're purposefully giving us this ambiguity in this final sort of non-showdown, right? It's an anticlimactic showdown between the superhero in a way and the supervillain. And we're led to think it's just completely ambiguous. Like, do they cross paths? Do they not? Does Chigurh just like take pity on him and not kill him? He easily could have killed him.
Maybe he tossed a coin and we didn't see it.
Right.
Or
Also,
maybe he got the money, and so he didn't have anything driving him more at that point, except for the commitment to killing Carla Jean.
right.
Yeah, that's a last loose end.
So these other readings now also call into question for me who ends up with the money or what happens to the money. Because I had also interpreted it as Chigurh got his hands on it because he went back to the hotel room for it and got the money. But maybe not. Like maybe the Mexicans got it. The people who ended up killing
Right.
Llewellyn?
That was something you brought up when we were watching it because Laura was like, well, they were in there battling, right? And it's like, did they just like, and they were looking for the money. Did they just like decide like, let's just leave? Like,
right. Isn't their mission to retrieve the money? I mean, also to kill Llewellyn, but like, isn't the whole point that they want to get the money back? And did they just like things got too hot and they had to leave and they had to leave them. They couldn't find the money because it was in the air shaft or not. But now I'm not so sure who ended up with the money. But also that's such a Coen brother thing.
I think it's ambiguous, right? I mean, what do you think, Edward?
I think so. I think I was, before I rewatched it this time, I was pretty sure that like, oh, okay, he was in the room when Belle showed up and he had just retrieved the money and he was behind the door. But then I started like looking closer at like all the other details of that scene, like the window that they pan to and all of that. And I was like, oh, no, they very deliberately tried to make this ambiguous and creepy, and I think to good effect. Like it's probably better than just being like, oh, he was shriveled up real thin behind the door and just like managed to like pull the move that a five-year-old playing hide and seek would pull.
Yeah. It's so, I find it in a way, but it is more disturbing that way, where you're just like unsettled. You're like, wait, why? What's happening? Like, I don't know what is going on, because I thought I knew what was going on. I thought I saw a cross cutting, so I expect like them. He opened the door and then like bam, bam, guns are gonna be blazing, and like it doesn't happen. And so then you're just like, was he there? And you're just like left with this, and then the movie basically just ends. I mean, you get that like last little monologue, and then that's it. And it just sort of, you're just like left unsettled in a way. And I think that is kind of the aim that they're trying to leave you with this movie, is this feeling of like, you're not, interpretate. There's no kind of safe space within which to interpret this movie. You're always feeling like unmoored. Like you don't know where Chigurh comes from and what motivates him. And, that's the feeling that, I call him Lee Jones. The Lee Jones, Sheriff Bell always has. He's just like, who is this invisible sort of demon that's like stalking the streets that I can't make sense of?
It's the youths.
Yeah, it's true. It's just it's the trolls on Twitter. You're just like, oh, I can't.
The dismal tide.
Okay, so that's good. So now we have a good sense of what at least the complexity of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure we answered any of our plot questions,
which is great.
One of the most delightful things about this movie are just sort of like bemused, but not too surprised Texans. Just like being like, sure, okay, He says, "Do many people come in here without their clothes?" He's like, it's unusual, but I'm not going to make a thing of it, Or just like the motel, the woman who owns one of the motels, and she's just like perplexed why people want to keep getting rooms that don't make sense for how many bodies they have. Like she's like, that room has 2 double beds. It's so good.
Yeah.
That's one of the strong things I think this movie does really well, is it captures like these small town Texan characters that you only get like a snapshot of, most of them, but a lot of the dialogue and the way that these, I guess most of them are probably character actors or locals who are cast for the movie, just really nail a lot of like little mannerisms and things. Like,
do you guys have favorites of those supporting actors?
He's one of the more prominent ones, but his uncle Ellis that he goes to visit late in the movie. But he has a much longer speaking role. The border guard is actually probably my favorite minor character in this one.
Nice. Yeah, I really like the lady who runs Llewellyn Moss's trailer park.
Yeah.
And she
can't give out no information.
Yeah, she does this thing with her body where like when he's like, he just keeps asking her and she kind of like moves her body a little bit, like and then he just kind of smiles and walks off, and I love that lady.
Where does it work?
Sir, I ain't at liberty to give out no information about our residents.
Where does it work?
Did you not hear me? We can't give out no information.
Yeah, she gives him the stare down, and she's like one of the few people he encounters who he like doesn't mess with.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. He doesn't flip the coin for her.
Well, you could sort of see his wheels turning. He's like, should I kill this lady? And then and
then the toilet goes off.
flashes, and he's just like, I don't feel like killing 2 people today, so he leaves. Like, that's how I interpreted it.
He's like, I only have 1 coin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I like the motel owner, manager, whatever she is.
Look at us. We agree about everything.
Oh, that was your favorite too?
Yeah, that's why I was.
No. There's the trailer park owner who you were talking about.
No. I like the motel, the double bed lady, where she's just like, she's just so confused, and he's just like, it doesn't matter which room I get, and she's looking at him like, what? Like, you have to tell me which room. This is how this works. Like, she's just like,
you pick the option what goes with the applicable rate.
Yeah. Thank you, Edward. You know the right words.
Have you ever stayed in like a motel like that, Edward? Like when you were traveling around Texas?
So straight up, I stayed in that hotel.
What?
I was passing through New Mexico and was like passing through Las Vegas where they filmed a lot of it. Right. And I was like, well, I think I knew No Country for Old Men was filmed here. So I like quickly Googled it when I was trying to find a hotel, and I was like, oh, I could just stay at the one where the giant massacre in the hotel room happens.
Come on.
And it's just like a very inexpensive roadside motel. And I just like got there and was like, oh my God, this is exactly like it is in the movie.
Did you stay in room 138 or whatever?
I don't think I had a choice. I should have asked for a map.
You should have. Oh
but,
my gosh.
I was just like, oh, well, if I have to stay in a hotel in this town, I might as well pick one that was in a movie I really love.
That's so cool. Really I have more follow-up questions though. So are the interiors of the room like they are in the movie, or are they different?
No, I think they set
periodized them
back to look like they probably would in the 80s. So yeah, they're much more modern now.
Cool. Oh, that's so fun.
But like the exterior is pretty close.
Wow.
I don't know that I've ever stayed in a motel like that. I've stayed in the kind of like drive up where you like sort of, there's no interior hall. Everything's like right outside your door. I've stayed in those before.
Yeah.
But they've always been like franchises, like the Best Western or something. So I haven't really stayed in basically a horror movie motel, that's in my head what nothing good happens in those motels.
Okay. Themes.
Well, I should say I see this movie and I guess by extension the book really with Sheriff Bell as kind of like the rock and the center and the portal into the world. I mean, I think the book is definitely structured that way, in a movie with his opening narration and really his monologue at the end, bookending the whole thing. Like he's not your protagonist, but he's like your window into it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of it is just framed through his eyes, his reflections on the world based on his career as sheriff of Terrell County. And so one of the things you talk about is like becoming an old timer. Is the world changing? Or is it just like cyclical? Is it like something that everyone experiences when they get old? Is I think the world's falling apart and they feel overmatched by it.
What you got ain't nothing new. This country's hard on people. You can't stop what's coming. It ain't all waiting on you. That's vanity.
I mean, I think that's the thing that resonates with me the most, is this idea of, as you get older, you begin to, you just slow down. You don't have the same energy and drive to distinguish yourself anymore. And you're just like, I just kind of want to chill out. But you can't, because there's always someone else coming up to like challenge you, right? To bring something new, to push you. And many of us just sort of we just cede that space to the up and coming, right? Like like we maybe right now, because of our ages, are in the up and coming. We're the up and comers, but I can very easily see that shifting. That shift is already happening for me, where you begin to start to see like younger people and all the energy and vitality that they have, and you're just like, man, I can't keep up. Like it's hard, and there's just so much to do. And I think that feeling is really that's like the theme, I think, that's woven throughout everything that Sheriff Bell is talking about, is he's comparing himself to the old timers. He's like, I remember when I was young and I was looking up to these people, and how would they have dealt with the shit I'm trying to deal with,
Mm-hmm.
And this is tough. And now I'm in their place, and I'm trying to grapple with that. And so I like that theme a lot. I feel like it is a universal theme, because this is cyclical. It's ultimately, at the end of the day, as Alice points out, this is nothing new to you that you're experiencing this. It just feels new because it's something that you're going through right now as an aging man who's reaching retirement. But we all feel it, it's something everyone will feel. Those young people who are up and coming and taking your position will feel it eventually too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that. And that then that generalizes the movie outside of just like, okay, there's a psychopathic murderer and Mexican drug cartel and stuff. It's now become this more general thing about stuff that we can all kind of relate to in some sense, something we all have to deal with in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an important, I don't know, it's a theme. I think I get the sense that Cormac McCarthy is really interested in the book. It's anyway.
It's literally the title.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there the deputy character in the book as well, Edward?
Yeah, his deputy is pretty much exactly the same. He's kind of green, and he's trying his best to.
He's so enthusiastic and kind of hanging on every word that Bell says. Because I was thinking about that as like he opens talking about how Bell talks about how he never missed a chance to talk to the old timers, to learn from them. Whether or not that's true, because I was thinking about that too later on when he sort of laments, like, when Sir and Ma'am go, like, the rest is sure to follow, and these kids with their green hair and their nose rings. There's always, I think, a feeling too when you start to age out, and that you feel a resentment towards the young generation for not respecting you, for not saying Sir and Ma'am, or for not really appreciating what you've done. Maybe that there's also resonance there in terms of like the Vietnam vets kind of being left behind and like living in their trailer parks and not really like getting the respect and the income that they deserve for what they've given for their country. And yet, like, there is still, maybe that's true, some people don't respect Sheriff Bell for what he's done, but he does have a little acolyte too, who's hanging on his every word, and who, if he were to do this monologue in 30 years, is probably going to talk about how he at every chance talk to the old timers too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of the title, so I guess it comes from a Yeats poem called "Sailing
Classic
to
Yeats.
Byzantium." Do you know
Sailing
this?
to Byzantium? Yeah.
So it might just be interesting to here's the first what is it, stanza or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It says, "That is no country for old men, the young in one another's arms, birds in the trees, those dying generations at their song, the salmon falls, the mackerel crowded seas, fish, flesh or fowl, commend all summer long, whatever is begotten, born, and dies. Caught in that sensual music, all neglect monuments of unaging intellect." Especially that last part, it really does sort of feel like that lament of like, these people that don't they're not paying proper attention and respect to the unaging intellect of like the wisdom that's of the prior generations that have been passed down, that they have now at their I feel like that is part of the lament of Sheriff Bell at the youth and everything. But it's also a like, he's struggling to come to terms with his own mortality and his own, breaking down. Like, he's breaking down. He's not able to do the things he used to do, and he's confronting a violence and terror and revolution that is completely foreign and alien to him. And so, one way of thinking of Anton Chigurh is like, he's this inexplicable alien demon who is like a ghost, and that's just how it is. There are just like these things in the universe that are like inexplicable and horrible. Another way to think of it is like, that's just what you feel about young people when you're old. They're just aliens. You're just like, I don't get you. You don't share any of my values. I can't make sense of you.
What motivates you?
Yeah. What gets So anyway, I don't know.
So Chigurh is just like a personification of like.
Yeah. He's the personification of the youths.
Of the youths.
Of the Twitter youths. Anyway.
This wicked weird haircut and...
Anyway, so that's my read on the
I like that.
on the sort of revolution, right? The conservatism meets the revolution theme that is that's at the center of this movie. I mean, another theme that I think is kind of the, you know, and I wrote two things here, but I really think they're kind of related, is this relationship between, and this is like a common theme in Coen Brothers movies, but this idea of the nihilism in that the world doesn't provide meaning for you. You have to like kind of make the meaning yourself in your actions. It's a very existentialist sort of credo that, you know, you have to choose how to find it's in your actions that meaning resides, and in the choices that you make. It's not like you discover the meaning. It's not there. The world is this just absurd, chaotic place, and we indifferent, exactly, and we impose a kind of order and meaning on it through our actions. And one thing that where and I don't know if this is intentional, so I'm just going on a limb here, but one thing that's the theme in a lot of existentialist work, and especially Sartre, is you have this idea that there is at the core a fundamental freedom at the core of all of us. Like, we have to choose ultimately. And many of us are so afraid of that choice, and it comes out in this notion of angst, where you realize that like at any moment you could just throw yourself off a building. You realize that's in your power to do, and it gives you complete angst because you know there's nothing stopping you from except yourself from doing it. And so what we do is we invent these lies. We tell ourselves these stories like, well, you know, I would never do that because I love my family or something, and that's why I don't do it. And he thinks that's bad faith. Bad faith is telling yourself a story that sort of lets you not choose, because you get to put that choice onto something else. It allows you to just be like, well, I would never want to leave my family that way. That it's for them that I would never do that kind of thing. And he thinks, no, you choose ultimately. You can still choose, and you're just sort of denying yourself that choice. And so what I think is interesting is that Chigurh is in this respect like the ultimate person of bad faith, because all of his actions are decided by a coin toss. And the conversation that he has with
Carla Jean,
thank you. I was looking up the character. The conversation he has with Carla Jean at the very end brings this out, because he's like, look, I just flipped the coin. You need to call it. And she's like, what does it matter if I call it? Like, you still have a choice. The coin doesn't do anything. It's just a coin. Like, you still have to choose whether to follow the coin. And he's just like, call it.
He's so annoyed. He's just
like not happy about that. You know,
this is how I live my life, lady.
It is the best I can do. Call it.
I knowed you was crazy when I saw you sitting there. I knowed exactly what was in store for me.
Call it.
No. I ain't gonna call it.
Call it.
The coin don't have no say. It's just you.
I got here the same way the coin did.
But again, it's because he has this fealty to this twisted code, right? He's like, this is my code. Like, I said, here's the thing. I said to this guy, I'm going to kill your wife if you don't do this for me. And he didn't do it. So like, I just have to do it. And she's
I'm mad at my word.
Yeah. She's like,
what?
You could still not do it.
Right.
You could still like choose not to do it. And he's like, no. This is who I am. I'm the kind of guy who does this sort of thing. And that is this idea of bad faith of like, you're beholden to like an ideology or something. And that like, what's what drives you.
What do you think he meant when he said, I got here the same way the coin did?
By chance.
By chance?
Yeah.
But not, but does he really think he's just blowing in the wind? Like, he just said, like, I made a promise to a guy and that is what brought me to Odessa. He made a lot of choices. I'm just like I'm perplexed by that worldview.
The way I was thinking of it is like he does just flip coins all the time. He's always just like, I don't know, I'll just like
I guess I'll go to a decimal.
Yeah, like no, I mean he's working for these guys. I don't know, somehow he's working for the guys and they're like, all right, you're gonna do this, and I don't know. I kind of imagine, I don't know if this is your reading ever, but I kind of imagine that like he's flipping coins all the time in the back, and like because he does some stuff.
Like, what do I get for breakfast this morning?
Well, he does a bunch of things which are kind of inexplicable. Like, right, he's working for these guys, and they're like, hey, you mind sitting, bitch? And he's like, all right, yeah, and then she kills them. They're like, wait, I thought he was working for you. Like, what? So I kind of in my head, I'm always like, maybe you just flipped 2 coins before you got there. And
I never considered that, but I actually kind of like that reading because the fact that he kills those 2 guys out in the desert at night seems completely without reason.
Yeah, it's like random. I don't
know.
If
he were motivated by money, it might make sense.
That's right.
But he's not.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
He's not. He doesn't seem to care about the money at all.
Right. And Sheriff Bell tells a story about this guy who would like the first beginnings of him feeling like he feels alienated from this world, and then there's like this new brand of violence that's so much more terrible than when he was coming up. He tells about the guy who killed a 14-year-old girl and just said like, it's what I've always wanted to do, and if you let me go, I'll do it again. Anton Chigurh is definitely a psychopath, but he doesn't seem to take that much pleasure in killing either. He also just seems completely indifferent to it. It's just part of his day. Like he's not like a serial killer who like has a process and loves it. Like he's just sort of like, ugh, flipped a coin, kill you. Here we go, on with my day. You've no idea what motivates him. It's not even the joy of killing people.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the really unsettling things about him. Is you get the sense that he's driven by something, and within the concept of the plot, he seems to have a purpose, which is recovering the money. But the money doesn't actually matter to him as far as you can tell. Yeah. And he even goes so far as to kill basically everybody who hired him to retrieve it.
Yeah.
So like who he's actually even getting the money for by the end of the movie is a complete mystery.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so, I mean, I think it is deeply unsettling. And and I think that is this idea of like, we're confronting, and this is this order chaos idea of like, we need to somehow impose order. We need to make sense of stuff. And like, he's like, he prevents us from doing that. He is the world in this reading where the world just doesn't allow for these readings. Like we can do our best to try to make sense of this and that, but it's just never going to work. I mean, then that's a theme that the Coen brothers love, like it's explicit, most explicit in A Serious Man, where like, these characters like, why is all this happening to me? And like, and then and the answer is basically like, well, it's just shit happens. Like there's, it's not like
we don't know.
Yeah. It's just like stuff is happening. And that's a similar, the similar thing going on in like Big Lebowski, where there's just so much chaos happening and it's all misunderstandings and random events that lead to other things of great significance, but are just dominoes almost. And it's all premised on this complete misunderstanding. And it's such a, right. And there the take is, well, like the absurdity, you can find humor in the absurdity. There's levity in this absurdity. Right. And here it's like, the absurdity is terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Lebowski. You know my favorite joke in Lebowski, Justin?
Which one?
It's when somebody's taking notes while on the phone, and Lebowski like goes like pulls like a Scooby-Doo detective thing where he's like, I'm gonna What were you
No, I was gonna say the guy he's at the guy's house.
Jackie Treehorn.
Yeah. And the guy gets a call and Lebowski's like, oh, he's trying to hear what he's saying. And
it seems important. Yeah. He's writing something down. And then he takes off the paper, like rips it off and walks away. And Lebowski like is going to do some Scooby-Doo detective work and uses a pencil, that old move of using a pencil to shade to see like what the imprint of like the notes. And it's just like a pornographic drawing.
Yeah, it's like a stick figure with a giant penis. My favorite joke in that movie is at the end when they've got his ashes and they like
it blows in his
Donnie's
face.
ashes and it just blows right back in his face.
I don't know that I could even pick a favorite joke for that movie. There's so many little ones.
It's so good.
But I think I like that, like, you keep trying to find meaning. You kept, like, it's a puzzle. You think like there's like things are of import and that you're gonna uncover something, and it's all just nonsense. It's all just stick figures with giant penises.
That's what the world is. Yeah. Actually, that, you know what? If you read the book, there's a monologue where Anton Chigurh is sitting talking to Carson Wells, and he talks about how the world really is just stick figures with giant penises.
Oh yeah, that's
no, but actually he goes on this like really long like diatribe about how he sees himself as an instrument of fate, and I haven't reread that part in a really long time, but I remember reading it after seeing the movie and just being like, shut up.
I see.
Like you're ruining like the character that I saw in the movie, who's like so sparing with his dialogue and is like mysterious and just like, oh, okay, so this is a chance for Cormac McCarthy to like throw in some of his like musings, and imagine this character as like some greater force. I'm just like, no, I mean, I think it works better the way the Coens did it. Again, one of the better things that they, I think, eliminated.
Yeah, it does seem that. No, I like they leave so much to your imagination and so much unsettled, and it just lets you walk away being like, what did I just see? Like, what? I mean, in some sense, it's very precise, but in another sense, there's all this stuff left out. So you're trying to piece it together, and it doesn't quite, all the pieces don't quite fit, and it just leaves you feeling unmoored.
I think one thing I realized when I rewatched it recently, especially about Chigurh, is that your impression coming away from the movie, or at least mine for a lot of the memory I have of it, is that, well, he's this like basically invincible hitman who just is like a ghost and like he's untouchable. But he gets seriously injured 2 times in the course of this movie, and he's actually like extremely vulnerable.
Yeah, but he's like Terminator, and that he's just like, oh, like I have a flesh wound, let me just do a real quick blow up a car move, break into a pharmacy, shoot myself up with some lidocaine, like, and then like keep going.
Yeah, no.
But yes, he does totally get wounded for sure. He's limping around for half this movie.
Yeah, when he meets.
And near the end, he like, breaks his arm in a car crash that's completely random.
Yep.
Oh. Yep. Yeah, I was under the cover, so that I do not like open fractures. I'm not a fan. It's just like, sir, you got a bone sticking out of your arm.
That's a great. It's a great ending. It's such a great ending. Just because it comes out of nowhere, and you're just like, yeah.
I know, it's like a car insurance ad.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
It's horrifying. But that's the other thing about like, what is motivating this guy again, because he's going through a lot of trouble. Like he broke into a pharmacy, shot himself up with lidocaine, like did some minor surgery on himself, like, did some stitches to keep going for what? Like scary. He should just take the day off. I would at that point.
And what does he do after? Like, he's do another job? Like you have so little context for him that you don't like. Does he go on Craigslist? Like, how does he like?
He already killed his employer.
That was another.
Not going to get a good letter of recommendation.
Such a great intro to his character. The scene where he kills the guy with his handcuffs. Where you first see him, he's like in the back of a cop car, and that's the introduction to the character.
You don't even see his face; it's just a silhouette of him.
It's so good. It's so upsetting. The scuff marks on the floor is an incredible detail. It's a great intro scene, but. I was wondering out loud to Justin, I was like, do you think he was already hired by some part of this like drug deal gone bad as a cleaner upper when we first see him? Or is that just like he was arrested for something else entirely different? He gets out of that. Then he's just blowing in the wind and somebody else picks him up for a job. Like, is his life just like he wakes up one day, like he's just kind of moving from one thing to the next, as he does feel like he just got there, like money, like the coin moves through the world. And like, is there a connection between the way we first see him under arrest and the rest of the movie? Or is that just like a string of events for him?
Yeah. The book says that he actually purposely got arrested just to see if he could escape.
Wow. Wow.
As like a complete, and he like, I think later talks about it, if I remember right, he like laments it as like a vain act.
Wow.
Of just to like test himself, and it was stupid, and he like I think he's explaining this to Carson Wells right before he kills him.
Huh.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah,
That's interesting.
But like even without that context in the movie, like it's the like perfect way to introduce his character as just like a force.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that they introduce, and this is, I want to try to make another overarching theme of this movie, which is the cattle gun.
What is that for?
Would you hold still, please, sir?
You know, it is this device that is in a totally efficient system for killing. It's an efficient system. It doesn't leave a trace, right? Like that's helpful. There's no like casings. There's no bullet to trace. It just kills you and you move on. But in the other sense, it of course also is like totally unwieldy. Like you have to carry around this like thing with a tube, and like he has to, you know, he manages to use it on at least that one guy or a couple of guys, but only because he's like lulled them into a false sense of security. Like the guy,
they have to hold still.
They have to. Well, they don't know why he has it. They're just like confused. They're like, "What is this thing? Like, what are you doing to me?" And so it's not like it's a great weapon as far as like when you're running around, you're not going to be able to. You got to really close. You got to turn the knob to get the air flowing.
But what a creepy sound cue is that? That like the little hiss.
Oh yeah,
amazing. But what I think this kind of all adds up to is it's this idea that like it's this thing of like it's just like the movie. The movie is efficient, precise, also inexplicable. It's like, why would he use, you know, it's like use a more fit, like in a certain way, like use a better weapon. Like this would be there was many better ways to do this. You have this shotgun with
the huge silencer,
you know, but like, no, he uses this one like for some reason. And I just sort of think like, and of course it's like incredibly violent. Like I feel like all these words that I was using to describe the cow gun are like words you could use to describe this movie, like inexplicable, violent,
efficient,
lean.
Yeah.
Well, he primarily uses it to punch out locks. He only kills that one guy with the cattle gun.
Yeah, I'm imagining he kills the guy who he's later cleaning out the bed of his truck.
The chicken farmer. Yeah.
I guess I'm just imagining he kills that guy too.
Yeah, that would make sense. I feel like there's to his character, there's a certain degree of ego that goes with using that to kill a person, because you have to get intimately close with someone.
Close. Yeah.
And somehow, like, you know, he can use a shotgun from a fair range and take them out, but like you have to be able to like literally walk up to somebody after pulling them up in a cop car and get them to like ask them to voluntarily step out of the car and wait for you to put something to their forehead.
Right.
To use it. Like you have to treat them, like lull them in the same sense of security as a cow being led to slaughter.
Yep.
Which is also just terrifying
that
he's able to do that. But again, I think that's maybe partly because of like the very kindly, trusting nature of the kind of people in the region that he is operating in. It's like they're not suspicious that someone's going to put a little piece of metal to their head and it's going to instantly kill them.
Right.
Yeah.
I was taking stock this time of watching No Country for Old Men of like some of the other similarities to other movies of theirs. Like there were little shots that I noticed from other things.
What in particular?
So from Blood Simple, the opening monologue and establishing shots was one of them. The nighttime like highway shots of like driving down, kind of gritty Texas setting. Fargo also has a lot of like nighttime shots on the highway.
Yeah.
The nice law enforcement officer hunting violent killers. When Llewellyn walks by the hotel clerk desk and sees him like dead behind the desk is like when they pulls out of the parking garage in Fargo and sees the attendant shot. One of the long hotel hallways looks a lot like the hotel hallway in Barton Fink.
I haven't seen Barton Fink. Gotta watch.
And the last one was that when Chigurh kills one of the Mexican cartel members in the hallway, he kills him while he's holding a machine gun, and the machine gun keeps shooting at his hand when he's dead, which is what happens to one of the gangsters in Miller's Crossing. I don't know. Those are the things that jumped out to me. There's just like a lot of little shots and sequences that like really felt like they had just pulled from their own repertoire.
Yeah, it's almost like
you're
they're
such a Coen expert,
quoting
Edward.
themselves.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel I mean, I think somebody like you, Edward, who's seen their movies and pays such close attention to their career would see that stuff. But to me, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a quoting movie, like in the way that like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is like, guys, I'm like making a reference to my own movies. Like that's very obvious, you know, but it doesn't feel like that.
No, I agree. I don't think it does. I think it feels like, well, either they're doing it in a self-aware way and they're like, oh, someone might notice this, but it's a good shot, so I guess we'll use it. You know, they're such, like you said, like From Blood Simple is such a strong opener for their careers. Like they're good and they know what works.
Yeah.
And if they reuse a shot or a similar visual style, like I don't think you can blame them for it.
No, not at all. I mean, that's kind of why I think of it as like a capstone movie in a way, like the thing that sort of encapsulates everything that they've been working on their entire career. It's like, it's almost like the kind of movie that you want to make as your last movie, right? That like, it's looking back on your career, incorporating all the themes, bringing it all together. Although of course this movie there's some humor, but it lacks a lot of the kind of, you know, slapsticky humor that you get in other movies of theirs. Although there are some very funny parts.
Yeah.
Well, and that's almost explainable by the fact that this was their first like straight adaptation.
Yeah, and Cormac McCarthy's not really like a knee slapper.
Yeah, I mean they said, I think when they won the Oscar for this one, they said like when they won the screenplay adaptation award, they're like, well, you know, the only other offer we've adapted before was Homer. So we figured, why not after that? Why not start with Cormac McCarthy?
Yeah. I think like I'm thinking about the humor in it though. I was thinking, I mean, obviously the color characters, the Texan characters,
totally.
But also like I think you're so tense through so much of this movie that I start like laughing at inappropriate times. Like for whatever reason, because a lot of killings take place off screen. And so like when he's like, oh, the chicken farmer, he's like, how do you get to what airport might you use? And then you cut and he's like, he's cleaning out the chicken feathers. Like I laughed because it's like kind of like a good cut, but like that's an uncomfortable laugh.
Yeah.
But it's also like relative to like the deathly seriousness of the entire movie. Like those are tiny little moments of relief from it. And I think they do that very consciously. I have a lot of things that like that No Country for Old Men brought up personally for me that made me feel connected to it. So a lot, and again, because I think I view a lot of this movie through the eyes of Sheriff Bell, a lot of his kind of worldview and the perspective and the historical context that he embodies as like feeling that he's part of this legacy of like Texas lawmen, and not in the like romanticized thing like John Wayne sense of like Old West heroes, but like in the actual very practical kind of gritty sense of it, like people doing a hard job in a very difficult place and time. Like I grew up hearing a lot of that. My dad was kind of a Texas Rangers history buff, and my great uncle was a sheriff in Donley County up in the Texas Panhandle, and he's one of those sheriffs who he's got a Texas historical marker on his grave, and was one of those who like didn't wear a gun, which Sheriff Bell talks about in his opening monologue. And like, so just the world that his character comes from was very much like something that I had a context for going into this movie. And so it resonated a lot. And then just the characterizations of all the like small town Texas people were very, very authentic to like people I had met, like visiting relatives and other things in the Panhandle and parts of West Texas. And those parts just like, that's part of why I keep coming back to this movie, is it feels like one of the more authentic portrayals of people that like my extended family and like the context a lot of them came from. That and The Last Picture Show, if you ever watch that one. It's just, it feels like an authentic portrayal of like a time and place and like a people that I have connection to through my ancestry. And I think that's one of the big things about this movie that really is affected to me. I can't imagine that like that's anything that was intended, apart from like, oh, we want to make a movie as authentic about this time and place.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things that really, I think, keeps me coming back, because the suspense of the movie is gone once you see it.
Yeah, of course.
Like in a rewatching, you're not gonna feel the tension that you did the first time you saw it in a dark theater.
Yeah.
But just it's got kind of a comfy quality to me in that it's like, oh, I recognize these people. I recognize the world that Sheriff Bell is coming from, and like the context that he's describing, and I get his character and how he sees things, because that's just kind of like a worldview that I had a lot of access to growing up.
Laura, do you also, being from the Texas area, I mean, do you have any connections to the movie? Or
my Texas roots don't go as far as Edward's do. One side of my family has been in Texas for a couple generations, but my other side of the family is Midwestern. So, but I also feel like whenever I see Texas represented on screen, I like get a little jazzed. I'm excited about it. And hearing Texas accents is like a warm blanket. Like, even weirdly, when we watched Thin Blue Line, I was just like, God, I'm loving when people say window, like, roll down the window. Like, I was like, I don't like that movie. Shouldn't be feeling like a warm blanket, but I just like love hearing the Texas accent, and they do it everybody does it really well. And I didn't even hear, growing up in Dallas, we don't even hear it all that much.
We don't. Yeah.
Older people, my grandpa had a Texas accent. I feel like older people do. And there's a lot of sort of older people in this movie that are, like the working in the various shops and stuff, that feel like when you go into a small shop that's not a Walmart in Texas, like you find these people, they almost are like relics in Dallas. I can imagine there's, it's a different situation if you're in the Panhandle. But I once went to I was at a gift shop, and there's just the most Texas lady I've ever met. And she said something that was horseradishes instead of horseshit. And she said, people don't think, and that's why I'm so glad I'm not people. That's and I think about it all the time. And I love, like, God willing and the creek don't rise. I love that stuff. I just wish I were more Texan than I am. I feel like an imposter taking the Texas identity, because there's so little of me that I think actually reads Texas, but I love it.
Yeah, they really, one of the great successes of this movie that you guys are pointing out is its characterization of a time and place. And it is magical. It does sort of transport you into that place. And it, from a perspective of an outsider, it feels completely just as, it feels authentic. Of course, I have no way of verifying that, but I think in a way that's important too, right? That it sort of feels like this could be a real place, like even though it's a fictionalized portrayal of some stuff, and that in a way adds to the terror of it. Is that it's the setting is so ordinary and mundane. It's just like, this is just people living their lives, and then there's this chaos around them.
Right. I feel like that just accentuates how gruesome the actual like violence you see is. Kind of like Fargo in a lot of ways. Like, you got all these really nice, well-meaning Midwestern people, and all of a sudden these really horrible things start happening.
And they have to just deal with it. They have that. That's kind of the magic of the Coen brothers. One of the magical things is that you have ordinary people just like dealing with extraordinary things, and I think we can all imagine ourselves trying to reckon with those things. Like, what would we do in those circumstances? And by having this be very just sort of plain people in a way, I think it broadens the ability for us to. There's a certain whimsical, they're almost wise beyond their ways. So I don't mean plain by like they're dumb or something. They're quite wise and everything, but they're sort of plain in their values and attitudes towards things. They're just like ordinary folk. They're not superheroes, or super, supernatural, or have special powers. Or they feel fear and they bleed like everyone, and they have to confront these great trials.
Yeah, they're just polite, austere, amiable people for the most part.
speaking of Fargo, so should we reveal our Coen rankings? Did you change yours up, Laura? Or are we basically going to be the same?
I think we're going to be the same, pretty much.
So
I think we may have like one or two different ones.
Let's get it out there, at least for right now. As of late May 2020, this is the current ranking. Edward, do you want to go first as our guest?
Sure. I'm gonna do what Laura did on the last episode y'all did, and these are not in any particular order.
Unranked. You couldn't decide.
I'm gonna choose anarchy on this one and just reject the rules.
Well, it's tough with the comedies and the dramas.
It's hard. No shame.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like this is my list now, but like mood could make me like just tomorrow decide like, you know what, I really don't feel like I would want to watch that one for another year or two. So, and you know, it's weird. Like, despite this being like one of my favorite movies and one that I've clearly given more thought to, like I kind of didn't even want to put No Country for Old Men on there.
Mm-hmm.
Which probably doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense given how much I've been gushing over it for the last 2 hours.
No, I think that's what's insane about the Coen brothers. I like in one episode I said that they were like masterpiece machines. Like there's so many of them. It's like it's hard. It's hard to make the 5.
Yeah, it's hard to make the 5.
I think I may have like watched that one out for now. So like that was why I was thinking like I don't know that I get much more appreciation for No Country for Old Men the more I watch it at this stage.
Yeah, okay, I get
Fair
it.
enough.
I get it.
Yeah, I wound up leaving it on there, but you know what? I'll swap it out for the one I trained it. Okay, so first one is Oh Brother Where Art Thou? Miller's Crossing.
Oh, this is great. Yeah.
A Serious Man.
This is great.
Inside Llewyn Davis, and then I'll swap out No Country for Old Men for True Grit.
Oh my God!
Oh,
yes,
wow. This is
we have
amazing.
0 of the same ones, Edward. That's awesome.
This is
You're kidding!
Amazing.
Wow,
no.
This is great. Okay, so really quickly before we all share, but so I'm curious, like when you are considering a question like this, like what would be your top 5 favorite Coen Brothers movies? Like what things do? Because of course it's open ended. So like what sort of things go into your decision as far as how you want to? Which ones make the cut and why? Why are they making the cut when you're making that decision?
It's a really hard question to answer about theirs, just because their movies are so different, and you're having like, I'll watch a movie for a very different reason than the reason I watch like another one.
Yeah.
And again, it all depends on mood or whatever. But I guess these are the ones that I probably return to the most and feel like I'm still going to get something out of the more I watch them.
Mm-hmm.
Like The Big Lebowski was really close on this list, but again, that's one I've seen probably so many times that I'm kind of burned out on it for now.
Yeah.
But it's a movie that just has so many, like when y'all were saying like your favorite jokes were in, I was like, I don't think I could even answer that question.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Oh Brother Where Art Thou is just such an endearing movie for me, especially with the soundtrack that goes with it. Miller's Crossing is such a perfect genre piece. As like a 20s gangster movie that has such a twistingly complex plot and such strong performances, and again, like great sense of time and place, and the dialogue is like, I feel like a quarter of the dialogue is like a completely disused dialect of like 20s slang. And it's great. A Serious Man just is hilarious and kills me every time I watch it. Inside Llewyn Davis, for many of the reasons that Laura mentioned on a previous episode, I think is one of my favorites. It's a really captivating movie, and it's like such a depressing mood flick in some ways, but at the same time, like the music is really engrossing, and it just has that, I don't know, Oscar Isaac just
I know
you can't get enough of that guy, and he's just so perfect in that role. And then True Grit is one of those, I think the reason I wanted to put that one on there was that was one of the cases where they adapted something that had been adapted before,
right?
And they weren't remaking the John Wayne movie. They were going back to the Charles Portis novel, which I read, and like again, just like No Country for Old Men, they adapted it really faithfully, and even managed to like adapt like thematic elements into it that would only appear if the whole thing was being narrated by Matty Ross. that you lose when you're seeing it on screen and you're not reading it through her narration. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of other ones. Like I know a lot of people don't like Burn After Reading and Hail Caesar, but I've really enjoyed those two. But yeah, I'll stick with those 5.
I think what we're learning here is that Edward is a much more serious Coen Brothers fan than both of us.
Yeah.
Because those are some of those are kind of I would have to say somewhat deep cuts in a way. I mean, they're all movies that are like, we've seen them, but like I feel like you'll see none of them are on our list, and I feel like our list is much more pedestrian, I think, by comparison.
Yeah, I told Listen, I was like, ugh, my 5 is so like boring because it's like all the obvious ones. But
ours
I was
very
picking
obvious.
the obvious ones.
So you thought that you were picking so maybe what's obvious isn't obvious.
Yeah, now you got me really curious.
Okay,
all right.
Well, I just feel like
should we say them at the same time? I'm kidding.
Is it the exact same list?
No,
I think
I'm
they're
not
the
sure.
same 5.
All right, you go with yours first, and then I'll see if I've like tweaked my 2 and 3 differently.
You're gonna see why mine are like super basic. I mean, maybe there's only one outlier here, but okay. So number 5, No Country for Old Men. Number 4, Fargo, which I feel like is just like so obvious. Number 3, Raising Arizona, which I love.
I do love that one too.
And number 2, Blood Simple. So maybe that's like the only kind of off the beaten path one.
That's a deeper Coen cut. Yeah.
I really love Blood Simple. And then number 1, Big Lebowski. So I feel like that's the I mean, that list is pretty
yeah. Mine went 5, No Country, 4, Raising Arizona,
Look at
3, Blood Simple, 2 2 Fargo. So Fargo's higher for me, and then 1 Lebowski. So we have the same played. List. Yeah, we just played with 2 through 4.
Well, rough. So for me, the what went into making this list was a lot of it is rewatchability, and it might also just be that I haven't seen Miller's Crossing in a long time. I have only seen the ones that you mentioned. I've basically only seen. For each of them, I've only seen it once, except for Serious Man, which I've seen a few times. For a while, Serious Man was in the top 5 for me, but it for some reason it like left the top 5. I don't know. It feels like it's like a movie written for me, and yet I loved it in theaters, and I love that parable it begins with, and how that like sets the whole sort of it just sets everything.
Tone.
Yeah, the tone for the entire movie. But then I don't know what it was. Like I watched it with you, and I was less excited about it. I don't know why. But anyway,
I do think we have a Raising Arizona recency bias.
Yes.
Because that was one where I was like, that wasn't fun, right? And I didn't remember it being great. And then we rewatched it for Summer of Cage, and like it was so high on our Cage ranking, and we were like both in love with it. So there is
really good.
Maybe if we revisited some other Coen Brothers,
that's what I'm thinking.
Up.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is there's that, and I feel like there's like there are some Coen Brothers I haven't seen. So I haven't seen Hail Caesar. I haven't seen Lady Killers. I haven't seen Barton Fink. I haven't seen Hudsucker Proxy.
Yeah, some of those I haven't seen. I like Lady Killers, Hudsucker Proxy.
Yeah. Lady Killers is pretty much like everybody.
The Man Who Wasn't There.
Great. Right.
I feel like though. So Edward. So it sounds to me like Coen Brothers are kind of they're like pretty high on your list of directors. Like you really enjoy their movies.
I'll see pretty much anything they put out. Like it's a shame that I haven't a personal shame that I haven't seen like 3 or 4 of their movies. But
they've made a lot.
I've always heard were kind of meh.
Right.
But I just haven't put in the time to actually watch them. But I mean, like even like they're always doing something different and fresh. And I mean, even if it's something they've done before, or like thematically something they've done before, like no 2 of their movies are like alike.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think we just have to really quickly talk about Sugar's hair.
Okay.
Right?
Ooh.
Because
please.
Yeah, I think I've heard like some details about this. I seem to remember you telling me like that you tracked down where they got the idea for this hair.
Really?
I tracked down the source, but I haven't actually gotten to clap eyes on the source yet.
Okay. You did some serious detective work, but like a lot of the reviews, I feel like I read a few reviews for this movie, and everybody has to mention the hair because it's absurd. The hair is absurd. It like is the only thing that might sort of like undercut his complete frighteningness, or maybe it adds to it. I don't know, but it's a funny haircut. I think A.O. Scott says something about him being like a beetle from hell.
Yeah.
Everybody has to remark on like how dumb his hair is.
Well, here's my hypothesis. So could you imagine that guy getting a haircut? They'd be like, all right, sir, what do we do? And he's like, this coin has been traveling for 22 years. And you're like, what? Do you want like
you think
a
he
shave?
chose this particular haircut on a coin toss?
Yeah, maybe that's what he did. Oh, I was sort of thinking he just cut his own hair. Right? He's like, so he's just
not walking into a supercuts.
Yeah, no supercuts. He's just like, first of all, here's what he does. He blows up a car so he can go into a pharmacy and steal some scissors. Then he goes in and he cuts his hair, and then he's like, all right, I'm done. On to the killing. No, I like the coin toss hypothesis. It's like, heads, I will go for the page boy.
I think you just have this in mind too, because like we're giving each other quarantine haircuts, and we look about as good as Anton Chigurh right now.
Yeah, that's going to be my cut. Is the Anton Chigurh? Do you think you can handle the Anton?
Yeah, all right. I think we should do it. Okay, Edward, please tell us your inside information.
Yeah, so a couple of like interviews. Apparently, there was a book that a friend of Tommy Lee Jones named Bill Whitliff edited, and it's a photo book of souvenir photographs from a basically like a red light district in a town right across the Mexican border, like not far from where this story is set. And so it's like all from around that time, like late 70s, early 80s. And so it's all these like cowboys and like oil workers and other people who would just like hop across the border to have a good time with the prostitutes there. It's called Boys Town, La Zona de Tolerancia. And it's apparently there's a picture in this book, and it's not digitized, and I haven't been able to find it in the library, but it's a photo of a guy standing at a bar dressed like Anton Chigurh and with that haircut. And that is like the entire basis for his look. It came from like one photo in a book of like cowboys hanging out with prostitutes
wow.
on the Texas-Mexico border. It's
trying to find
$140 on Amazon.
Oh my God.
Do you have like an alert on it? Do you just like check in every now and again in case you can just like find one on eBay?
I keep waiting until I'm going to be close to a library that actually has it in stock. Yeah. And when I was still living in Princeton, I could have gotten it from Special Collections, and I just didn't do it. Yeah. But I really want to like scan that photograph.
Maybe
just
when
so
you make
I
it
can,
back
like,
to Texas, Edward, it's going to be, maybe there'll be more of those in circulation when you go back to the promised
land. Is there
land.
a genre of movie that you would want the Coen brothers to play with that they haven't done?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so I feel like most of their movies are set in the U.S., right? Like that's a pretty strong, like they kind of just tell Americans. They're like the Ken Burns.
Of
genre films. I don't know. I honestly, I read an interview with them that said they had like a really brutal spaghetti Western script that they'd written that they wanted to produce, but it was like pretty pushing the boundaries of violence. They weren't sure anyone would actually produce it. But like they've done Westerns like 2.5 times now, so I don't know if they would ever actually bother. I don't know. I'm game for whatever they put out, frankly. That's a really good question, though.
What about you, Lord? Do you have thoughts on this?
I feel like they've toyed with horror, but haven't done straight up horror.
I feel like, I was actually going to say that this is a horror movie. That was going to be my claim about the genre, but yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think we were talking about Michael Myers with Anton Chigurh. He does have some Michael Myers vibes.
Oh, yeah.
It's also horrifying, this idea that like that there is this inexplicable, whether or not it's killing you. It's just the inexplicable is itself horrifying. But I was sort of thinking like because they immerse themselves in the genre so thoroughly, it would be kind of interesting to see them go in for a genre that has really clear boundaries, like fantasy or science fiction, right? Like I just feel like I want to see like if they could do it, right? Like, and I think they could, but I just what are they going to do with that in the way that they can immerse themselves in noir or I don't know in these crime sort of genres and weaponize the expectations of the genre against the viewer. I just think it could be fun. So
yeah, I think you're making me think more and more about like the actual world threads that they kind of do, and like they stick to pretty grounded stories.
Yeah.
And place is so important.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is hard for us to imagine science fiction. Like, if it's not a place that we can have a reference to, like, what are like the
America
like what
in
are like
America
the sort
in
of
the future?
Okay, but like, what are, you know what I mean? What are the girl next door people of Mars? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
What small role can you put Stephen Root in?
Yeah. He's obviously going to be playing like a junk trader. That's how he would be a junk trader.
He did a lot with a couple lines. He was good in this movie.
He's great. He's always good.
Yeah,
but so yeah, we'll definitely have you back, and thanks so much, Edward. This was great. And
thank you all.
Usually at the end of podcasts you want to have people plug something, but I don't. Do you want to plug anything?
I got nothing.
Twitter profile,
the state of Texas,
Instagram.
Yeah, I was gonna say plug Texas.
Plug Texas. Go to Texas.
Texas rocks.
We're moving back there in like 2 weeks. So
really? Oh, congrats! That's great.
Yeah, it's a relevant plug.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.